Hello, everybody. Welcome to our live stream on LinkedIn. Hope you're doing well. It's around 11:30 here in Stockholm, and we're joined by Ian Pearce from British Land. We're going to talk about how tenants and landlords can work together to reduce energy consumption. Ian, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you, James. How about yourself?
Nice. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Nice to have you on the stream, and real pleasure to talk about what you guys have been working on, and you're going to present some slides in a minute. So I think it's going to be a interesting presentation and conversation. So everybody who's out there, thanks for coming and listening to us today. So we want to make this interactive. If you do have questions for Ian or myself, then put them in the comment section and we'll come to them after the presentation. So the format's just going to be little introduction from me. Ian's going to take over. We're going to go through his slides. And then, as I said, after that, we can take questions. And it's going to be about half an hour. It's also being recorded. So, if you want to share the recording with your colleagues afterwards, that would be great. And it will also be on YouTube as well. So that's it. Well, Ian, take it away, please.
Great. Thanks, James. When we were having a discussion about what topic we wanted to cover off, this is something particularly when I look at like smart building literature and prop tech literature and anything that sort of comes out, one of the first things I always consider is, well, what does this mean in terms of the customer, the occupier, and also the landlord? Because we have a lot of because I think to deliver a truly sustainable building, we obviously need both the landlord and customer to work together, particularly from British Land's perspective, where the high majority of our buildings are multi-tenanted for our commercial offices. But anyway, just to introduce myself. So my name is Ian Pearce. I am a senior product manager within the digital placemaking team at British Land. And the digital placemaking team look after the digital products and services in the built environment. And in particular, I'm the smart buildings lead. But in case you're not aware of British Land is one of Europe's largest listed real estate investment companies. We either own or manage a portfolio of about £13 billion of real estate. And that can be split into three key sectors, which is our retail, which is about 33%, our London campuses. So that includes a mixture of retail, commercial office space, and life sciences, and also urban logistics. And our aim with all three of those sectors is to essentially ensure we are delivering high-end, prime, sustainable buildings. And we see smart buildings being an important component of that now and in the future. So back in 2020, we developed our sustainability strategy, and that can be split into two areas, which is our social sustainability, but also our environmental sustainability. And in terms of the environmental sustainability, that can be looked at in sort of two areas. One is the development processes of our developing our buildings, and as you can see, our 2030 aims there, but also our operational consumption as well. So we have again the target there, but British Land operate and manage a large percentage of the property, so they're not just a real estate developer. We also operate and manage them as well. So also back in 2019, 2020, we formed the digital placemaking team here at British Land, which when we started the creation of that team, we sat down to define our strategy and our objectives, and we spoke to a lot of our internal staff and to our internal department, but we also spoke a lot to our customers as well, and included in those customers is Storey, which I'll cover off in a few more slides. And really, we were looking at, well, how can we utilize technology to create stronger links between the landlord and the customer? And in those workshops, we did a lot of sort of blue sky thinking in terms of what is a smart building, what are the buildings of the future going to be, what pain points do you have now, where do you think that the landlord and customer can work more collaboratively? Those kind of questions. And what came out of that was lots and lots of different use cases that we could see that required would be to delivered in order for us to deliver a smart building. And those use cases can be split into two areas. So one of them is what we term smart engagement. So smart engagement is around any use of the customer touch point. So anything the customer and their visitors or their employees directly interacts with, but also the other side of it is the smart building side. So in terms of smart buildings, we're talking about any of the building operational systems and what needs to change with those building operational systems in order for them to be sort of smart enabled or enhanced for us to better utilize their performance. To facilitate the delivery of a lot of those use cases, we defined three principles that were required in order for us to facilitate that delivery. And the first one of them is interconnectivity. So a lot of those systems, like the building management system or the lighting control system or the access control system, they typically live in the basement in our buildings in a secure area on a local server, and only have one head end for our engineer to go and look at and operate. And we really saw, for us to deliver a smart building and a smart building product, we needed to have an interconnected network where all the data from these respective systems could be extracted out into our smart building product and give us an enhanced knowledge and give us the capability to do insights and analytics and optimization that we couldn't do before. So if we wanted to compare the energy usage from the energy management system and the occupancy levels from the access control system, we could do that at a click of a button in one central system. The second principle is around occupancy-based operations. So again, moving away from this approach where everything comes on at 6 a.m. and turns off at 9 p.m. and works full pelt within all those hours in between, we knew that we needed to have a building that reacts more to what's going on in the space and being able to change our operation. So as we know, offices, the usage of offices is changing. And so we needed to be able to automatically react to what's going on in that environment and be able to modify the temperature and the ventilation and the lighting based on what's going on in the space, and then effectively make reductions of operations and create energy savings, and even where possible, improve the user's experience. The third principle, which obviously one of the key ones we're talking about here today, was around having a holistic asset strategy. So we knew if we were connecting all these systems and getting all of the data out, we would have enhanced knowledge. But of course, if we're just doing that for the landlord areas, you're limited in just the landlord space. So really we need to work with our customers and those who are taking the spaces within our buildings and look to collaborate with them so that we can get further data, we can cover more area with our smart building product and be able to get actionable insights and get better understandings all within one location. If you'd like to continue to the next slide, please. So again, we're still in 2019, 2020, and 100 Liverpool Street is going through its redevelopment process. And as you can see from the pictures there, they aren't CGI, they are the actual photos of the building. It is a truly stunning building. If you don't know 100 Liverpool Street, it is right in the city of London in our Broadgate campus. It is adjacent to Liverpool Street Station, so you can, in fact, walk from the rail concourse through into the retail area, where there's 3 floors, as you can see on the bottom left-hand photo. And in the top right-hand photo, on this side of the building, we have food and beverage offerings overlooking the Broadgate Circle there. And then we have 8 floors of commercial office space. And from its inception, it is always planned to be a showcase building for British Land. And its aims were always to be as sustainable and as smart as possible. And in fact, it was British Land's first net zero carbon development. So we knew from a smart aspect that for us to ensure that we needed to facilitate us to deliver a smart building, we needed to have defined standards on what those building operational systems would be able to provide us. So we created our smart building design guides, and these were given to the contracted parties for them to deliver against. And so our smart building design guide for each of the building operational systems, it defines the connectivity, it defines the data requirements. So for that system and its different assets, it defines what data points we want for each of those assets. It defines the frequency that we want that data. It defines the format that we want the data, and also any security protocols. We also have the network design guide. So this defines the building connectivity and security requirements. So again, that's helping us facilitate getting the data out of the building and into our smart building product. And in the third document, I should say, is the smart building fit out guide. And this is what we provided our customers who are moving into our property. And again, it provides them design recommendations for their building operation systems that they'll fit in their own space. And essentially, it's to encourage them to smart enable their respective building systems. So if they would like to come on this journey with us and utilize our smart building product, they have the opportunity to join us on that. And that is, in fact, what happened. So Storey, who are one of our tenants, so it is British Land's flexible workspace company, they took 1.5 floors at 100 Liverpool Street. It was about 45,000 square foot. And what Storey do is they offer fully private, personalised offices. And so what they've done with that floor plan is they've created 12 units within that floor plan for 12 different occupiers, so typically of about 20 to 70 people. They each have their own independent personalised space, but they also have shared amenities. As you can see on the photos there, there's lounge areas, there's meeting rooms, there's event spaces as well. And when they were conducting their fit out, they ensured that the parties who were contracted to deliver their systems within their place followed the smart building fit out guide in order to match the standards that we put within the landlord area. And so what that allowed us to do was to create the following sort of connectivity diagram. So as you can see on the top left-hand side, they are the landlord building operational systems that were installed and smart enabled. So that includes the BMS, it includes the lighting, it includes the access control. But we were also able to connect with the Storey's systems as well. So again, they have their own BMS for their own space, they have their own access control, they have their own lighting systems. So our smart building product integrates with 2 different instances of those different systems for the one property. And of course, again, when we're working with the landlord area and working with the Storey area, they had different respective systems to operate their space, like the lifts and escalators and fire within the landlord area. And also within the Storey Space, they had their own IoT sensors. So they installed desk occupancy sensors, ceiling occupancy sensors, air quality sensors that we integrated with. And we also some sort of softer systems as well, like our permit management, help desk, and meeting room booking. And that's probably an important component I could have mentioned in Principle 1. It was having an open platform that would allow us to essentially connect anything that we wanted in terms of the different systems to help our understanding with the building, because some are going to be directly related to assets within the building and operate from the building, but some are going to be more software based as well. And so a high percentage of those use cases that we defined back in 2019, 2020, a large amount of them were delivered at 100 Liverpool Street. And they can really be grouped into those 5 use case groups that were on the left-hand side there. So live and historic data. So we provide live visualizations and dashboards to the different users. So that includes our landlord users, which is our property manager or our engineering manager, our central operation teams, but also Storey users as well. So Storey's operation teams and Storey's community manager who operates their space on a day-to-day basis. The next 2 of the visualization, operational insights, and predictive maintenance, because we have all those 19 systems on the left connected and they're feeding data in up to every few minutes for some of those systems, we can now begin to understand the trends and changes over time, and if there's any anomalies or if anything hits a parameter we're not happy with, we can automatically raise that incident or that issue or that fault through to the respective party. So if some of the assets in the building management system are not performing as expected, we can raise that through to the engineering team. But also some on the softer side, if we have permits that are expected to start in 48 hours and they're not approved yet, we can raise that to the property manager to go and investigate. The bottom two again can be grouped together. So remote building control and automated building operation. So with remote building control, this provides the certain privileged users with the ability to go in and make changes to the lighting and make changes to the air conditioning within the BMS should they require. And that is for both the landlord and the Storey instance, or the Storey version. But ultimately, that's not our aspiration. We're not really aiming to encourage that, because what we're trying to encourage is automated building operation, so that our smart building product would automatically go in and influence the lighting and influence the BMS based on what's actually going on within the space. And that is in fact what we did in the Storey and landlord space there at 100 Liverpool Street. So as you can see, what we defined in that Storey space across that 1.5 floors was 23 different spaces. So we created about 6 or 7 optimization strategies. So that and that is very much dependent on the type of space. So for meeting rooms, for example, we utilize the meeting room booking data, we utilize the occupancy sensors, we utilize the air quality sensors to understand the environment, to understand if it's occupied, and therefore influence the HVAC performance if it's not in use and not planned to be used. Or subsequently, if that reverses and then it does become in use or it does be planned to become in use. Similarly, with the unit demises, we use the access data and lighting PIR sensors to again understand who's entering the space and is anyone currently in the space, and again reduce HVAC and lighting performance if the space is not in use. And then with event spaces, we utilize the meeting room booking, but we don't have the use of occupancy sensors in those larger spaces. So we utilize the lighting PIR sensors there. So we really have a mixture and combination of different sources to impact those different individual optimization strategies. And those floors, so the second and the first floor they're on at 100 Liverpool Street, they also have landlord areas with their own air conditioning as well. So there's 2 lift lobbies within that space as well. And they're operated by the landlord. And again, we utilize access data there, so we link that in as well. And we utilize the access data to understand the count of people within the building, the count of people within the floor, and then use that to influence the HVAC performance within that space. And so what that has allowed us to achieve is results where we've been able to connect over 1,300 different Storey customer assets. So everything from Storey's air conditioning units to the access control readers to their occupancy sensors, and then also over 7,500 landlord assets as well. And for Storey, what that has achieved in our implementation is a 33% reduction in the HVAC energy consumption for the year-on-year comparison to the previous year. For lighting, that has been a reduction of nearly 24%. And what's particularly interesting with the lighting is that has been a mixture of manual intervention and automated intervention. So yes, we're doing automatic changes to influence the lighting within the space, but also because we have those live dashboards and visualizations, it's actually given the team there a better understanding of the energy consumption from lighting and what's going on in the space. And then they've made their own manual interventions to influence the lighting strategy as well. So obviously we're very happy with the success of what's gone on there, and then we've now moved on to our next step. So we're currently retrofitting our smart building product into 6 properties in the next 12 months. We're also deploying it into 2 redevelopments, so they'll be PCing as well in the next 12 months, and we'll be able to come along and implement our smart building product there. And of course we're now engaged in all of our British Land's developments going forward to ensure that any of our buildings are smart enabled, ready for when we come along and add our smart building product. Now that we've successfully delivered in both the landlord and tenant area, we're now going out and having those discussions with our customers. We're showing them the results of what we've achieved. And yes, we're going out to those in the existing properties and those that are moving into our developments to essentially encourage them to come and collaborate with us and possibly join with us on this journey. And of course, we're not just leaving the product there. We're going to continue working on the product, adding new functionality, not just for sustainability performance, but also any other sort of operational efficiencies that the product can help us support. And we are also refining and enhancing that current functionality based on any of the feedback that we're getting from the data generated. And so, yeah, that's essentially our journey that we've been on to today, and what the results we've achieved and what we're hoping to achieve in the future. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Ian, awesome. Thank you very much. Really interesting to see that journey. And I'm sure we're going to get some questions. So anyone who wants to ask Ian a question, feel free to put it in the comments section on the events page, which I hope anyone can see. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's great to see such like a joined up strategy that you've had, and that journey I think that you've explained over the last few years. I think it makes a lot of sense. One of the slides I thought was pretty cool was where you talked about the three parts, the last one being about the fit out that you give to your customers. I think again it makes a lot of sense, because I suppose there is a kind of hand-holding process there. A lot of your tenants probably don't know too much about smart buildings. Why should they, right? But I mean, is that what's feedback been like with there? Are they interested to see that? They want you to help? They want that help from you guys?
Yeah, it's been really, really positive. I think with everything that's going on in the world, we know sustainability is such a key principle, and I think we know from what's been going on that ultimately our customers have been really engaged with us, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the next stage of customers then going on this journey with us. Because you're right that if you've been in a different office, if you're going into one of our redevelopments and you've been somewhere else for 20 years, what was implemented 20 years ago or 10 years ago was very different to now.
Right.
And so we're very happy to share those learnings that we've had, and yeah, the feedback has been really, really good so far. And we're hopeful of the next step of getting some of our customers joining us in our smart building platform, because I truly believe that's the way we're going to get to a sustainable building. Because obviously we can do a lot of work in the landlord areas and it's great and it's fantastic, but then if tenants want the heating on 24 or cooling on 24 hours a day, it's never going to be sustainable. So it's really a focus of ours.
They have to be part of that, don't they? Absolutely. Also on that, I think the first part of that slide as well, about your kind of how you put together the proposals and what you want to see, right, in terms of the smart building technology. Could you elaborate a little bit on like how do you choose vendors? How do you decide who to work with once you've defined what it is that you want?
So in the creation of our smart building design guides, we didn't work independently with that. We worked with the likes of Arup and Google in order to define those standards. So it wasn't just an independent, this is British Land, do it this way. Yeah, we worked with other parties to define that standard. And then ultimately, yes, when we have a main contractor on our redevelopments or new developments, and then obviously that gets subcontracted out. And the difference now with having the smart building design guides is it really helps influence what parties are selected, because ultimately certain standards need to be met, and if a system doesn't meet those standards, they're not going to get into one of our, not be delivered in one of our buildings at the moment. And so it is interesting because as we are now, the development process of a building is quite long. So obviously we're beginning to notice the same parties being selected, even if it's a different contractor who is selected as the main contractor on a redevelopment. There's, we're seeing the same parties in those different operational systems coming to being invited to tender more, again and again, because they're meeting our standards, and of course that continues on. Mm-hmm. So that's essentially what we've noticed.
Okay, so it's within that document that you specified, and then obviously they have certain criteria to meet. Did you go through some sort of proof of concept stage with different ones, where they, maybe you, depending on, I suppose, what system it was, but maybe implementing it in part of a floor, or doing some kind of testing phase? Was that necessary or not?
Not in the selection of the system. When we went live, yes, itself we did.
Okay.
Particularly with the Storey Space, we did it in the meeting rooms before we did it in the unit demises, because obviously, if you're influencing a customer's environment, we want to check if the meeting rooms are used for a number of hours a day. We didn't want to directly influence in their space first. So yes, we did a bit of a phased rollout to check everything was as expected, and before we continued on.
Makes sense. One more question here. We've got about 4 minutes left, guys, so we could probably do this question and one more after that if you want to put it in the comments. It says, question for Ian: are there any interaction points with the actual occupants of the building, i.e. the employees of your tenants? How are they working? Sorry, just how are they working together with your automated smart home system? What kind of value have they been able to provide or receive?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we did a lot of workshops with customers, and then what we do now is when we're giving the smart building fit out guide, we're also going and doing demonstrations with those, particularly at the moment, those new tenants that are moving into those buildings. And so we obviously have those discussions with them. We're going through that journey with them. So we have our team directly, the digital placemaking team. They are the direct contact with the customer who's taking that space. So yeah, we get a lot of feedback as well. We've obviously shown what we're doing, and we take in the feedback if they ask any other questions of anything else. We've also, as I've mentioned, we did workshops as well with customers too. And again, as I mentioned, when we did roll out our change in how we operate the BMS and implement our optimization strategy, when we implemented that in Storey, we did engage some of those occupiers first to explain and go through everything that was the case, and what we were doing and why. And again, feedback was really good and supportive of us implementing this.
Okay, great. Probably got time for one more question. There's some here that we're going to miss, I'm afraid, but I think maybe Ian will come to them after the stream, because they'll stay in the comment section. So one here. How did you establish the baseline on a new building to work against?
So I say fortunately, but with the 100 Liverpool Street example, the building was already PC'd, it was already live, Storey had already moved in before we came along and implemented our smart building platform. So what was quite an important learning was actually when we went live with the product, the first thing that we noticed was we had quite a lot of alarms go off, and ultimately there was problems with the commissioning process, where it identified a few flags that we'd say, okay, well, that space is heating and cooling at the same time, and it's been like that since we created. So one sort of advantage was that we actually had that base point, because the building had been fully occupied for a year, or the Storey Space, I should say, had been fully occupied for a year before we implemented our smart building platform. So that's how we were able to create the baseline. The obviously downside was it identified some of the weaknesses in the commissioning of the building, and ultimately now if we could have, it would be, our learning is that when we go to the next buildings, we want to be there earlier, so that we can essentially get those points when warranties are still in place or engineers are still on site as part of the commissioning process, to identify them and get them fixed at the beginning. So I suppose that in one aspect we're fortunate for that, but there's also weaknesses in that, or there's downsides, I should say, in having that time period. So that's how we were able to understand the exact difference, because we've got the exact meter consumptions for that Storey Space from the previous year. Okay, so going forward in the new building, if we're there, day 2 after PC, we won't have the luxury of being able to know exactly what the difference would be. But at least with here, we've got a true understanding of what's the difference of not doing anything versus putting our own smart building product in.
Yeah. Ian, thank you so much. We've run out of time, guys. Sorry about that. But there are some questions here, and we'll try and get to them afterwards. We'll comment on those. I'll ask Ian to do that. And also, obviously, the slides Ian showed, we'll put them on our website along with the recording, so you'll be able to share that with colleagues afterwards as well. Ian, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you walking us through that, and great stuff. I think it's really good to see you get those energy savings out, and those sort of, validates what you've been doing with your strategy. So well done for that.
Thanks, James.
Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.